Hey everyone, welcome to the Week 17 edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast. Of course, here on vacation, or at least traveling around the country, here is Jake and I, as we're getting you set for the Waiver Wire pickups. Entering your championship week, we'll have at least one more show discussing the Week 18 Waiver Wire pickups, hopefully in better locations, but we'll get you at least the prominent information in what I would imagine will be a short podcast. And frankly, for a lot of folks, that might be important because you just need the hard-hitting facts as we're all running around for the holidays, entering Week 17. So let's hit the music. Welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday, December 23rd, effectively 24th edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Joe Bartel. You can follow me at JB Fantasy Sports. On Twitter, you follow Jake at RotoJake. We're talking about Week 17 Waiver Wire pickups. We always do our top five. List here, I guess, as it's showing me something up. Yeah, our top five Waiver Wire list, and that's great. We're gonna effectively work on that because for the most part, it's gonna be two people competing for these free agent guys. Maybe if you're in leagues like Jake and I, where it's total points scored over the final 2 weeks, that matters. But the Waiver Wire top priorities, I think, will be kind of the key here. And we'll go quickly, position by position, talk about streaming candidates too, as we continue on doing all of our holiday stuff with the family over the next couple of days. So, Jake, I'll turn to you. Who are your top five Waiver Wire pickups for this week?
Yeah, so it's always a little difficult doing the show on a Monday instead of a Tuesday, because even on Tuesday we sometimes complain that we don't quite have the full picture of injuries. We don't quite have the practice reports just yet. And for that reason, my number one overall pickup is going to come with an asterisk, right? And I'm going to go ahead and say that my number one overall pickup is Trey Benson of the Cardinals. He's only 18% rostered in Yahoo formats, and it's a very interesting situation here in Arizona. Obviously, we have James Conner suffers a knee injury, leaves the game. Chance he doesn't play. But also, Trey Benson didn't play this week in the first place, right? Nor did he practice in the week leading up to it because he has an ankle injury of his own. So obviously, this is just me kind of taking a stab right now. You might have more information when you go to make your pickups tomorrow night. So something to watch out for. But obviously, Trey Benson is one of those guys we've talked about all year as a handcuff backup. He's always been in and out of that top five. Maybe he had a little bit of standalone value here. But this Arizona backfield has been, just ravaged by injury. Connor has the knee injury. Trey Benson has his ankle injury. Remember, Amari DiMercato is on IR with a back injury. So you're looking at Michael Carter or DJ Dallas if Trey Benson is unable to return to practice and suit up this week. And of course, this all hinges on James Conner being out. But you could be looking at one of those other guys. Michael Carter got all the work after Conner was injured. DJ Dallas, of course, had the touchdown, but that was really his only touch. He didn't have any. Carries in this game. It all went to Michael Carter, who was elevated from the practice squad. 5 carries for 18 yards. 5 catches for 30 yards, too. He had 24 snaps, and DJ Dallas had 13 snaps, more of a special teamer. So I wanted to hit the whole Arizona backfield because my number one pickup would be Trey Benson here.
Obviously, because I think it's important just to kind of give context to that, folks. So Cardinals lost surprisingly to the Panthers on Sunday. They are out of the playoff race. They cannot win the NFC West. They can't make a wild card spot. They are done. Trey McBride was talking about how they lost to the sorry-ass Panthers team. Well, that's because you're not very good either yourselves, Cardinals. So we enter that. James Conner has been an injury risk for much of his career. He has yet to play a game where he had over 17 games played, it's to have a season over 17 games played. So that this is going to happen isn't all that surprising. These folks should be playing, but it's Trey Benson, who's the 3rd round pick. That's the bigger deal if he's out. And we know that Michael Carter, former Jet running back, was the pass catcher. DJ Dallas for the Seahawks has been a pass catcher too. So it's very interesting, like you noted, that Michael Carter was the running back of that group.
Yeah, absolutely the case here. So just wanted to give you a little bit of a tier and hierarchy, and thank you for providing the helpful playoff context there, on the Cardinals and what they look like for the rest of the season. Obviously, they want a guy like Trey Benson to be healthy, moving forward here, for the franchise. But anyway, that's the Cardinals. If it weren't for that situation, if you told me Trey Benson and James Conner were out for sure this week, I would probably make Hollywood Brown my number one pickup. He's only 32% rostered in Yahoo formats. I ranked him number 2 this week. We missed him entirely last week because he was supposed to come back week 17. That was supposed to be his comeback. He beat his return timetable by a week. Good for him. That's good to see. He only played 27% of snaps, I believe, But in those 20%, 7% of snaps, he had 8 targets in the game. So Hollywood Brown, enough volume, and Patrick Mahomes is healthy. It's okay. Both the Cardinals they play the Rams on Saturday, by the way, and the Chiefs also have the Netflix game on Christmas Day, actually.
On Wednesday. On Wednesday.
On Wednesday, yeah. What a crazy week here for setting lineups here. So definitely you're going to have to remember to set those championship lineups on a Wednesday beforehand. I wonder how our leagues are going to adjust
2 Wednesdays, 1 Thursday game, 3 Saturday games, then Sunday. And I don't believe there's a Monday night game here in week 17, but just think about that.
In week 17.
Multiple games happening before Friday and then 3 more occurring Saturday. It's going to be a mess if you have made it to the finals from that perspective.
Exactly. So anyway, good to bring that up. Hollywood Brown here. He has, I wrote it down here just a second ago. He's got the Steelers. Right? Yep. Yeah, it was 8 targets and on only 27% of snaps, caught 5 for 45. Yeah. I was just looking ahead to say that they're at Pittsburgh this week, which is a pretty tough matchup for opposing offenses in general. But the Chiefs still do need a win with the
number 1 seed still on the line.
Yeah, that's exactly.
And the Bills having won their matchup against one another earlier this season. Technically, the Bills have a long shot chance of still making that number 1 seed. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's why I've got Hollywood Brown number 2 on my list. Number 3 on my list is, again, we're doing the show on Monday afternoon. It's the best we can with the holidays here. We don't know how the Packers Saints is going to play out on Monday night. Well, we got a pretty good idea. But one thing we don't know is how effective Kendre Miller might be for the Saints in the absence of Alvin Kamara. He's all the way up to 46% rostered. So some of these picks are a little bit fringe close to 50%, but he's up to 46% rostered. And he's someone that you might need to go get depending on how he does against the Packers tonight and whether or not Alvin Kamara suits up, in week 17. But he was the guy over Jamal Williams. After Kamara got hurt in the 4th quarter in week 15, it was, it was Kendre Miller was the guy. So we have to keep him placed adequately on the list here. Again, when we did the show last week, we did not know that Kamara was for sure ruled out. We thought there'd be a decent chance he came back. Obviously, that's not the case here. So a depleted Saints team heading to Lambeau on Monday night. Number 4, another higher roster guy who we did discuss last week, but continued to produce. That's Jalen McMillan of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, only 45% rostered in Yahoo formats. But the streak that he's been on cannot be denied at this point. Let's see, what do I have here? He's had a 3-game touchdown streak, each of which he's had 6 or more targets in. Caught 5 of 7 for 51 in the touchdown last night on Sunday night against Dallas. Andy's got the Panthers this week. This soft ass Panthers team, right, that Trey McBride likes to talk about. But I mean, the Cardinals did score quite a few points in that game, so very interesting there. So McMillan is up there. We've got some long shot dart throw receivers that you're probably not starting in the championship game, but we'll get to that in a little bit towards the end of the show. Then my number 5 pickup here is the Colts defense. They're 47% rostered. They're at the Giants. The Falcons were at the Giants this week. I believe they put up 24, 25 fantasy points, depending on your scoring. The Giants just don't have it. There's no quarterback. Neighbors is banged up. Tyrone Tracy aggravated his ankle injury, apparently. So the 2 good players that the Giants did have on offense, Neighbors and Tracy, are not 100% in a season that is fully lost, that they will most likely have the number 1 pick in next year's draft. You go ahead and pounce on the Colts, who are capable of making a big play here and there. We're okay against Tennessee this past week. So those are my top 5. Trey Benson / Cardinals backfield, Hollywood Brown, Kendre Miller, Jalen McMillan, and the Colts defense.
I'll just throw in a couple more. Craig Reynolds, obviously, with Dave Montgomery done for the season, at least fantasy-wise. We were wondering what that would look like for the Lions. Just 4 carries, 18 yards. Massive matchup next week against the Vikings, which will effectively the Vikings-Lions game is week 18. The Vikings play Packers week 17. But Craig Reynolds could be in a spot where he gets a bit more work, as the Lions might be trying to protect themselves. In that instance, I don't know if I'm playing Craig Reynolds, given only 4 carries for 18 yards. He played 10 total offensive snaps. That's not a whole lot. But a Sunday night game against the 49ers, Niners don't have a lot to play for, but I think they're a better team with the record has shown, at least with more of their guys healthy. So Craig Reynolds not quite there. And you mentioned Tyrone Tracy. So Devin Singletary, if Tracy's out, becomes a guy that probably becomes a pickup. There's a bunch of passing opportunity last week with Tracy banged up and the Giants just stinking overall. I don't know if Singletary necessarily benefits, but he's a name to monitor too. I would agree with you. You're playing the Cardinals backfield if James Conner's out, whoever's the starter, and you're playing Kendra Miller in that instance too. There isn't really many other waiver wire guys from the running back position that I'd go and get. So effectively 7 names among our top 5 list that you should be considering. Let's get a word quick from our sponsors, Blue Wire, before we dive into the positional groups for the Waiver Wire show. All right, we're back. And again, just talking about the quarterback streamers now. I mean, we saw Michael Penix make his debut. Kyle Pitts made sure that it ended on a sour note, or at least halftime sour note, because Pitts drops the easiest of easy throws, bumbles it right into the defender, and that's Penix's first interception. Doesn't throw a touchdown, but you could tell the offense was more explosive with Penix in there than Kirk Cousins. Now, the stats of Drake London will be worth monitoring. I guess head coach Raheem Morris had said London would probably have been able to play if the game was more competitive. And the Falcons now have the inside track at the number 1 NFC South spot after the Buccaneers' surprising loss. So Penix is kind of going to be in a really important play next week, whether you're doing fantasy or just real life football.
Yeah, they're at the Commanders this week in Fantasy Championship week, which isn't the greatest of matchups, but he will probably be in a spot. I mean, if anyone watched that fantastic Commanders-Eagles game this week, he's probably going to be in a spot where they're going to have to score a lot of points. And, Penix will probably air it out 30 times or close to it once again. He's only 14% rostered. Again, that news came afterwards, after the show last week. So, a tough situation here. But when I look to streamers, like, who do you actually sit, right? Mahomes ended up being okay. We expected last week to fully prepare for Mahomes' absence. He ended up being fine. He does have a tough matchup at Pittsburgh, but chances are you're probably not sitting him. I mean, I've been in the Invitational, the Roto Invitational. I've been benching Mahomes for Goff the last couple of weeks, Jared Goff, and that has worked out perfectly. And I think I'm going to continue to do that this week here. Maybe you have to replace Jalen Hurts. He had a concussion, went out of the game. It didn't look like a super, super bad one, but who am I to really judge this? He was they did some freeze frames where he looked a little woozy, but you can do that with literally any player over the course of any game here. But you might have to watch that in case Kenny Pickett ends up being playing for him. I did get somehow I didn't have any Jalen Hurts this year. It was not by choice or by design. I just didn't have any, and I caught one break this week. But of course, I hope all the best for Hurts. Then after Penix, as far as who's readily available to replace these types of guys, it's the same usual suspects as the last couple of weeks. Russell Wilson, home against Kansas City. Aaron Rodgers, he's 41%. He's at Buffalo. That could be interesting as long as the weather doesn't get in the way there. Aaron Rodgers has been like red hot of late, and he's looking like the Rodgers of old. Weird that it finally happens when he has literally nothing to play for, but
it's Netflix special. That's what it is.
That's exactly. Yeah, to end it on a high note, right? Drake May 14% versus the Chargers. Cooper Rush 10% at Philly. Bryce Young 7% at Tampa Bay. Maybe that's more for a 2-quarterback league, but as you can see here, the Tampa Bay defense makes everybody look pretty good. So
that was the only one. That was the only one of this list. And again, you had mentioned, I think this is the important part. Theoretically, only 2 people playing. Are you really benching any of your starters? No. I was going through the list of quarterbacks. Bryce Young is my favorite of that streaming group. Who would I play Bryce Young over? That might be typical starters. Justin Herbert against the Patriots. I'll play Bryce Young against the Buccaneers defense over Herbert. And then the other one.
Herbert have or who has the Broncos? I believe it's Joe Burrow has the Broncos.
You're still playing Joe Burrow over Bryce Young. I don't think you really. The other one, and Tua against the Browns defense, I'll play Bryce Young as opposed to Tua at Cleveland, no matter whatever the conditions might look like. The one I was going to post to you.
The Dolphins are weird. Tyreek Hill is just not it. Jalen Waddle's hurt. Tua's not the fantasy quarterback, even when healthy, that we thought that he was probably going to be.
The one I'd pose to you, would you play Sam Darnold against the Packers in Minnesota, or would you play Bryce Young against the Buccaneers? I think you have to play Darnold, but I didn't know if that was yeah. So realistically, Bryce Young, the best of the streaming candidate group, and then also realistically, you're not really considering him unless you're in a super flex league and really needing some depth, or you're trying to replace Jalen Hurts in the event that he's out. We don't know. Again, recording the show.
Yeah, exactly. Monday. It would have to be a 2-quarterback league where everyone else stopped making pickups, or something like our stake league where Hurts suddenly can't play and everyone's playing for points, and you have to go for a guy. So I guess Bryce Young would be the one there.
Let's move over to the running backs. Before we do so, word from our sponsors, LIV Golf. A new season of LIV Golf Fantasy is coming in 2025. New prizes, new ways to win, and more are coming in the new season. Get ready to play and sign up now at fantasy.live, L-I-V golf.com. All right, at the running back spot we talked about, and I think we spent a fair and appropriate amount of time on the Cardinals backfield to start the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we ran down the whole Cardinal backfield. I would say just in the interest of keeping things moving for the special holiday episode, if you're just joining us live now, turn back to the front of the show and you'll get the whole rundown on the Arizona running back pickup. I actually had Trey Benson as a possible number one if he can get back on the practice field this week, which is no guarantee. We also talked about Kendre Miller at the top of the show. Very dependent on Monday Night Football. Again, we're recording this on Monday afternoon, Monday afternoon for most people. So, we'll kind of wait and see. The other one I threw on here that almost made my top five, but I put the Colts defense on instead. Alexander Madison is the kind of the de facto RB1. He outtouched Amir Abdullah 16-12 with Sincere McCormick out. This is against the Jacksonville team ranked 31st against opposing running backs, though. So literally had the best matchup. Couldn't do a whole lot with that. Basically saved his day with the touchdown here. They're at the Saints in week 17. Really, again, you're probably not starting him in a championship game, but if it's a stake league situation, I'm probably starting him in stake league.
Yeah, I'm playing Abdullah in deeper leagues. I think that would be the call in that instance, as opposed to Madison. With the Saints defense being a little bit better against the run, and the Raiders really being able to do nothing against, offensively other than Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers, there probably is a lot of checkdowns to Amir Abdullah and a full point PPR. I'm leaning Abdullah in that instance. So I like the other one, the other call here. We kind of forget about this game because it happened Thursday, but Audric Estime found his way into the red zone, actually scored points for the Broncos. Surprising loss to the Chargers. I mean, the Broncos had a dominant lead in that first half, and we all kind of forget what happened Thursday with the holidays, but Audric Estime continued to be the waffling running back of choice for the Broncos at times.
Yeah, no, I have him on the list. I'm hesitant because we've tried and failed multiple times to predict the Denver backfield. It seems to be a constant rotation here, but Estime is only 7% rostered. He's at Cincinnati this week, who there's going to be a lot of points scored in that game, and of course, he has a good week here. So it still was done on only, what do I have here, 13 offensive snaps and 7 special team snaps. But of course, in those 13 snaps, he gets 9 carries for 48 and scores. So he's in there too. I wrote down San Francisco running backs here because with Isaac Guerrero out, Patrick Taylor was a starter, ended up getting 3 fantasy points. So hurt a lot of people this week for sure. It was very brutal here. He was ineffective, but somebody's got to start in San Francisco. We'll see what goes on there. But that's the running back rundown, basically. Look at the Cardinals backfield when you're doing pickups here tomorrow or Wednesday. See how Kendre Miller did. Madison's possibly an option. Estime is possibly an option. And then 49er backfield.
And I was wrong at the top of the show, so I guess you can listeners out there screaming at me in the radio or whatever. I corrected it 13 minutes later. There is a Monday Night Football game this week, and it's Lions-Niners. So if you were missing Guerrero, hoping he would start, and then Patrick Taylor is the guy you're waiting on, you're going to have to wait all the way till Monday to figure out what's going to happen with that. Lions-Niners in San Francisco is the Week 17 game, which will make things even more complicated if you are playing Guerrero or Patrick Taylor in the championship.
Yeah, exactly. So we can probably move on from those. I think we gave you enough other options here.
All right, before we get to the receivers, let's get a word from DK Pick 6 and our guy Nick Whalen kind of breaking it all down for us.
We're proud to be brought to you by DraftKings Pick 6. So many NFL offerings each week over at Pick 6. Been enjoying playing on the Pick 6 platform each and every week of the NFL season. Think a certain quarterback will throw for more than 300 yards. How about your favorite receiver scoring a touchdown? Check out Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy football and win cash right now with DraftKings. Here's how it works. Just pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. Yards, catches, touchdowns, etc. Lock in those picks and compete against opponents for a shot at huge cash prizes. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use our code ROTOPICK. That's ROTOPICK. Again, ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. If you're a new Pick 6 customer, play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Just use that code, ROTOPICK. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-89-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick Six not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. See terms at picksix.draftkings.com/promos.
We're back and burning through the waiver wire pickups. We talked about the positional groups for quarterback and running back, and now it's worth mentioning the receivers. Reminder, folks that who are just tuning in live now, we did talk about our top 5 waiver wire list at the top of the show with Hollywood Brown making an appearance. Surprisingly so, it was not expected that he was going to get the activation he did, and then ended up second in team in targets. I think Xavier Worthy had 11 and Marquise Brown had 8. I have no idea what you do with DeAndre Hopkins in this instance, but something to keep in mind that Hollywood Brown is back and was a critical chain mover, which is what we thought his role would be when we were talking about the show at the very beginning of the year when Hollywood Brown was a guy we liked a lot in the mid to late rounds.
Yeah, obviously the speed and offense you want a piece of now that we know Mahomes is healthy. Tougher matchup at Pittsburgh, but it is what it is. We also discussed Jalen McMillan at the top of the show. Jalen McMillan, I need to enunciate that right. He's 45% rostered, 3 straight games with a touchdown, 6 or more targets in each of those games. Gets the Panthers this week. So those are probably the 2 that stand out. As far as other guys I had in my notes, I wanted to bring up Romeo Doubs, who's still within our threshold at 45%. I think he was around 38% when we talked about him last week. All of those things apply. He's back from his 2-week absence due to a concussion, wearing the Guardian cap, scored a couple of touchdowns. Again, maybe a little touchdown dependent, tough to be consistent, but I could think of a worse, wide receiver 3 in really, really deep formats here. And then I put some dart throws on the list here. Last week we mentioned maybe Dynami Brown stepping up for the Washington Commanders with Noah Brown on IR. Well, now Dynami Brown has a hamstring injury, and it looks like Olamide Zacchaeus is the next man up over there. Once again, you got to be pretty deep here. Also consider Robert Woods with Tank Dell out with his, after his gruesome injury here. Robert Woods had 58% of the snaps and 6 targets for the Texans. So he is climbing up there on the target list or the progressions for CJ Stroud. But I think there's another Texan in tight ends that probably has a better path than a guy like Robert Woods. So who are you? Anyone else you want to add to receivers?
I think it's worth echoing Robert Woods, obviously far gone from his Bills and Rams days in terms of a player, but you look at this matchup, it's home in Houston, but it's against that Ravens passing attack. They're going to have to keep pace. Not that it really matters, but I guess if the Texans were to lose, the Colts, I believe, still have an outside shot at the AFC South or something close to that. Because I know the Colts aren't effectively done in the playoffs, but I think Robert Woods, if you saw getting a lot of work against the Chiefs when they were trying to come back, that is the 1-for-1 replacement of Tank Dell. So in Stake League, for example, I had to play Wan'Dale Robinson as my flex and Antonio Gibson as my other flex. I would much rather have Robert Woods in this instance over Antonio Gibson, the backup for the Patriots. That's an extreme scenario. It's bore from a really dumb format and a lot of injuries that I've had. But if you have to go to Robert Woods, there's a lot worse scenarios, I think, to consider given the Houston Texans facing the Ravens for this week. So I'm with you on that one. Let's go over to the tight ends. And we talked about Stone Smart. We're possibly nearing the end of Stone Smart having fantasy relevance. Hayden Hurst was activated off injury reserve last week, didn't really factor in too much, but Will Dissly will now be entering his 3rd week where he has not played. It's possible Will Dissly comes back. And in that instance, Stone Smart out of the equation. We mentioned Juwan Johnson, of course, this being recorded Monday morning. I don't know if Juwan Johnson will be a factor here Monday night against the Packers. Packers favored by 14, according to Vegas, so it might not matter altogether. But like you said, there is at least one relevant tight end that's kind of emerged that would be available in shallower leagues, I'd have to imagine.
Yeah. So Dalton Schultz is the guy that stands out to me. He's 56% rostered, so technically cheating here with over our threshold. But he's getting a lot of he's basically been wide receiver 2 here for the Texans with Tank Dell out, and of course, like you just mentioned, they get the Ravens this week. Hunter Henry's another one that's sticking around the threshold, 49%. They're at the Chargers this week. We're 6th against opposing tight ends, so probably stay away from that as a streamer. A couple more names got to throw out there. Tyler Conklin. He has 5 or more targets in 3 consecutive games. He gets the Bills on the road this week, who are, who knows with how
they've been allowing a lot of yards. That's for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. We saw, Jared Goff have that historic game. The one that actually stood out to me the most, though, is Chigo Okonkwo for the Titans. He's had a fantastic 2-week stretch. Some of this is matchup related. 2 weeks ago against the Bengals, catches 8 of 10 for 59 yards. Last week against the Colts, catches 9 of 11 for 81 yards. And those, of course, are the teams ranked number 32 and 31 in fantasy points allowed to opposing tight ends, respectively. But he gets the Jaguars this week, who check in at 26th in that area here. So you could probably do worse. He's one that's pretty readily available, and someone that I guess is worth a look. I mean, I got beat by somebody who started Brenton Strange this week, so there are situations in which and I started Brenton Strange in a league that I'm going to likelihood move on to the finals in here. Based on what Strange did last week and what Chigi did last week, I think I might go for Chig.
And over like the Friermuths of the world, that's kind of the range in which I've been deciding these tight ends. Tucker Kraft kind of in that spot too. The Steelers play the Chiefs on Christmas. This shouldn't matter, Jake, but if I could decide my crappy tight end 12 streamer, I would like it to not be on the day where I'm supposed to be enjoying life and presents and everything else with the family, that I have to be sweating what Pat Freiermuth is doing on a Netflix special show is outside my realm of normalcy. So I'm with you. I think those tight end options are pretty good. So I'll turn to you because I want to make sure my internet's not losing it too much. Is there any defensive guy or defensive streamers that you're looking at this week?
Mm-hmm. Well, first I'll start things off with a thank you to the Atlanta Falcons. After 2 weeks with the Atlanta Falcons, we can safely probably cut them with the matchup against the Commanders on tap. They have been great for us in the meantime. But now the number 5 pickup I put at the beginning of the show, it's the Indianapolis Colts, 47% rostered, so that's a little higher at the Giants. I don't typically do this with road teams, but in this case I am, because they are the Giants. We're looking at Drew Lock at quarterback, their best player overall, best receiver, Malik Neighbors. He's banged up. Tyrone Tracy aggravates his ankle injury. It's a mess across the board for the Giants, who will be getting the first pick in the NFL draft. It's not clinched yet, but I'm just going to say they will be getting the first pick in the NFL draft. The Colts are the defense you want this week. Unfortunately, one of the guys I'm playing with in the championship this week had already picked up the Colts because they did have a pretty favorable matchup against Tennessee last week. So, people that planned ahead, which I know you encouraged our listeners to do at one point, they paid off. If you can't do the Colts and your regular defense isn't going to cut it, I could be talked into Tampa Bay at home against Carolina. Maybe. Don't love it. I could be talked into the Chargers on the road against the Patriots. Yeah, again, maybe. Don't love it. And then you could go ahead and take either team in the Jacksonville versus Tennessee matchup, because I think both those quarterbacks are probably throwing pick sixes. So maybe that's number 2 after the Colts. Take the home team, Jacksonville or Tennessee. I mean, what are you going to do? They're both terrible. You don't want to spend any part of your holiday or Boxing Day or whatever or what have you watching a Jacksonville versus Tennessee matchup this weekend, but they might have some relevance for you. So anyway, that's what I got for defense streamers.
No, that's perfect, Jake. I think it was a good breakdown. And again, a reminder, folks, we'll have at least one more show, if not 2 more, for Week 18 waivers. We do our award show as well too, with the Waiver Wire pickups of the year and kind of putting a bow on everything else. So, understandably, obviously, conditions were unfavorable for this show. We did the best we could from the live video audience as well as the listening audience too. But thanks everyone for dialing in to the Tuesday edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast, the Waiver Wire show, and back in this time next week.